There is a silence that isn't empty. It's heavy. It's the kind of silence that waits, filled with words. Nobody has the courage to speak. For months, this was the sound of the WWE backstage. A hush had fallen. The bright lights, the roaring crowds, the pyrotechnics. It all felt like a distraction from the shadow that had draped itself over the entire company. A lawsuit had landed, not just with legal force, but with a moral weight that threatened to break the very foundation of the business. Names were whispered. Details were passed in horrified, quiet text messages. And one name, a name, synonymous with dominance, with legitimacy, with utter, terrifying force, was suddenly spoken with a different kind of fear. The name of Brock Lesnar. He wasn't named directly in the public filings. Not at first. He was a UFC champion, an indie man talent. But everyone knew. They knew what the texts implied. They knew the sickening details alleged by Janel Grant. And as the company preached a new era, an era of transparency, of female empowerment, that name lingered, unspoken, in every production meeting. We follow a young woman, a composite of many. Let's call her Sarah. She's a production assistant. She loves wrestling. She grew up on it. She believed in the women's revolution. She helped set up the banners that read then, now, forever. But now, those words felt like a cruel joke. She, and many others, felt a creeping sense of betrayal. The machine they loved, the one they worked for, felt compromised. They were told to focus on the future, but the past was clinging to their ankles, refusing to let go. The question wasn't if the company would address the monster in the room. The question was when, and what would happen when the monster decided to come home. It started not as an official announcement, but as a digital whisper. A rumor on a minor dirt sheet easily dismissed. Management discussing a potential return for Lesnar. At first, it was laughed off. Impossible, one veteran said, shaking his head. Not now. Not after. The company was too smart. They were corporate now, publicly traded. They wouldn't risk the sponsors, the media backlash, the internal revolt. It was unthinkable. But the whisper didn't die. It grew. It found its way from the fan blogs to the employee text chains. Backstage, before a live show, the atmosphere was different. The usual pre-show buzz was replaced by a nervous energy. You could see the locker rooms divided, not by brand, but by belief. On one side, you had the old guard, men who had been in the business for decades. To them, this was just noise. It's business. One was overheard saying, "He's a draw." People forget. They always forget. They saw it in black and white. Dollar signs. The scandal was just a public relations problem, a hurdle to be cleared. But on the other side, in the women's locker room, it wasn't business. It was personal. It was a deep, visceral betrayal. The outrage wasn't loud. It wasn't tables being flipped. It was a cold, simmering dread. They exchanged glances. They spoke in code. Are they really going to do it? One asked, her voice barely audible. After everything we fought for, they were the faces of the company's empowerment message. They were the ones who had to smile for the cameras, visit the children's hospitals, and talk about breaking glass ceilings, all while knowing that the man implicated in allegations of the most horrific kind might soon be sharing a hallway with them. The rumors became so loud that management had to step in. A week before the company's next major premium live event, a high-level executive will, call him Mark, held a private backstage meeting. It was mandatory for all talent and crew. The air was thick. Mark stood at the front, a forced corporate smile on his face. He talked about record profits. He talked about the success of the European tour. And then he addressed the elephant in the room. I know there are a lot of rumors flying around, he said, his tone attempting to be casual. I'm here to tell you there are no immediate plans for Brock Lesnar's return. We are focusing on the incredible talent we have right here, right now. A few people clapped, mostly out of obligation. But the women, they didn't clap. They just watched. They were experts at reading scripts, and this one felt weak. The language was carefully chosen. No immediate plans. It wasn't a denial. It was a delay. It was a legal move, a way to placate them until the storm blew over. But the storm wasn't blown over. The Janel Grant scandal was getting worse. More details were emerging. The media was connecting the dots. After the meeting, Sarah, the production assistant, was clearing coffee cups when she saw one of the top female champions. Let's call her Chloe. Chloe was leaning against a wall, her title belt on her shoulder, but her face was pale. She was staring at a women's empowerment poster on the wall, featuring her own face. Mark walked past. Great meeting, right? Glad we cleared the air. Chloe didn't even look at him. She just said, "You didn't clear anything, Mark. You just opened a window, and it stinks." He froze, stammered a reply, and hurried away. The outrage was quiet, but it was starting to find its voice. The denial hadn't quenched the fire. It had poured gasoline on it. It happened on a random Monday Night Raw? No build-up. No warning. The main event was over. The champion was celebrating in the ring, holding his title high. The show was supposed to be fading to black. And then, the arena went dark. A low, familiar hum. The crowd held its breath. And then, the screech. That unmistakable, violent guitar riff that signaled the arrival of the beast. The crowd exploded. It was a conditioned response. For 20 years, that sound meant chaos. It meant legitimacy. It meant something real was about to happen. And it did. Brock Lesnar walked out onto the ramp. He was wearing his signature flannel and a cowboy hat, a chillingly neutral smile on his face. He bounced on his feet, the pyro exploding around him. In that moment, for the 15,000 people in the arena, the scandal was a distant memory. The draw was too strong. The spectacle was too big. But backstage? It was a different story. In the production truck, Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Her headset crackled with the director screaming, "Get a camera on him! Get a close-up!" But she was frozen, watching the monitor. In the women's locker room, the sound was muffled, but they heard the music. A monitor showed the ramp. The laughter and conversation died instantly. It was as if a vacuum had sucked all the air out of the room. Chloe, who had just come back from her own match, sweaty and exhausted, stopped dead. She watched him soak in the cheers. Just 2 hours earlier, she had done a PR hit for a local charity, talking about being a role model. Now, the man who represented the darkest part of the company's hidden history was back. And he was smiling. The segment was short. Lesnar walked to the ring, circled the champion, gave him a cold, predatory stare, and then walked out. He hadn't touched his soul. He just appeared. He established his presence. He marked his territory. The show ended with his music playing, a signal to the world. The beast was back, and business was business. He walked through the curtain, back into the gorilla position, the nerve center of the show. He was expecting high fives. He was expecting the producers, the agents, the executives to clap him on the back. "Welcome back, Brock. That was great." And at first, he got it. Mark, the executive, was there, his face plastered with that same corporate smile. Incredible. Brock, "Welcome home." A few male wrestlers nodded, giving him his space, as always. But then, he saw them. Standing by the hallway that led to the locker rooms was Chloe. And she wasn't alone. 3 other female wrestlers were with her. And they weren't moving. They weren't clapping. They weren't angry. They were just watching. It was a silent, suffocating wall of judgment. Brock Lesnar, a man who feared nothing, who had conquered the ring and the octagon, actually, stopped. He looked at them, his smile faded. He was a predator, but this was a language he didn't understand. This wasn't a physical threat. It was a moral one. Chloe met his gaze. She didn't flinch. She didn't say a word. She just held his stare. The message was clearer than any shouted insult. We see you. We know. And you are not welcome here. Mark, sensing the catastrophic tension, tried to break it. All right, everyone. Clear the area. Great show. He gently tried to guide Brock away, but the damage was done. The outrage had shown its face. And it was cold, quiet, and absolutely terrified the powers that be. The next 24 hours were a blur of corporate damage control. The silent protested gorilla had rattled Mark to his core. He immediately called another mandatory meeting, this time just for the female roster. No crew, no male talent, just him, a PR representative, and 25 women who looked like they were ready for a fight. Mark tried his usual tactics. He talked about contracts. He talked about professionalism. He talked about difficult decisions for the good of the business. Brock is a draw, he said, his voice pleading. His return brings eyes to the product. That's good for everyone. It makes the pie bigger. We have to be able to separate the art from the artist. The allegations are just allegations. That was the breaking point. Chloe, who had been sitting silently, stood up. The room went quiet. Allegations, she said, her voice dangerously calm. We all read the texts. Mark, we read what Janel Grant said. We read what he... what he called her. And you want us to separate that. I have to go out there and tell little girls they can be anything they want to be, and then I have to walk past a man who... who was part of that. Another wrestler stood up. He's getting a paycheck. A massive one. What message does that send to her? To Janel. That her story doesn't matter. That her trauma is just the cost of doing business? The room was electric. The quiet, simmering dread had finally become a voice. It was an eruption. The PR rep tried to interject. We are taking this very seriously. Double quotes. But she was shouted down. No, you're not. Chloe pointed at Mark. You're not taking it seriously. You're monetizing it. You're putting him on TV. You made your choice. And now, we have to make ours. The internal outrage was only the beginning. The public. The media. They were not the 15,000 fans in the arena. They were not conditioned to cheer. The moment Raw went off the air, the internet exploded. But this wasn't the usual fan debate. This was mainstream news. Forbes, The New York Post, Sports Illustrated, ESPN. The headlines were brutal. WWE brings back star implicated in heinous Janel Grant lawsuit. In wake of sex trafficking scandal, WWE puts profits over people. Female staff disgusted by Brock Lesnar's return. Someone from the meeting had leaked the details. The outrage was no longer a secret. The scandal was no longer just about Vince McMahon or John Laurinaitis. It was now, irrevocably, tied to Brock Lesnar. And worse, it was tied to the new leadership. The company that had promised a clean slate had, at its very first opportunity, reached back into the mud. Sponsors started calling. We can imagine Mark, back in his office, his tie loosened, his corporate smile gone. He's on the phone, and he's not in control. A major snack food brand is reevaluating their partnership. A toy company is concerned about the family-friendly image. The company thought they were managing a public relations problem, but they had fundamentally misunderstood. The scandal wasn't a problem to be managed. It was a crime to be condemned. By bringing Brock back, they hadn't just ignored the issue. They had endorsed the culture that allowed it to happen. The title of the scandal was exposed, but it was the company's own hypocrisy that was now laid bare for the entire world to see. The WWE Universe, as the company loved to call its fanbase, was now a kingdom at war with itself. The lines were drawn, and they were bitter. On one side, you had a vocal, furious contingent. Fans who had seen the women's revolution as a genuine, positive change. They felt personally betrayed. Social media was flooded with videos of fans burning Lesnar merchandise. #FireLesnar was trending higher than the company's own hashtag. We see a father and daughter, stylized figures, arguing at their dinner table. The father, who grew up with the Attitude Era, tries to explain he's innocent until proven guilty. It's just allegations. The daughter, holding her phone, shakes her head. Did you read the text instead? It doesn't matter if he's charged. We know. How can you still wear his shirt? But on the other side, there was the defense. The loyalists. The fans who saw Lesnar as the last real athlete. He's a monster. That's the point. One video essay argued. You're not supposed to like him. This isn't ballet. Others simply didn't care. They wanted the violence, the spectacle. They wanted the beast. They decried the outrage as cancel culture. S-off. This division was toxic. It poisoned every comment section. It turned the product sour. The company had brought back its biggest draw, but in doing so, it had shattered its own audience. The cheers in the arena were real, but the silence, the anger, and the subscription cancellations from homes around the world were just as loud. The legacy of a man was crumbling, and it was taking the company's reputation down with it. And where was the man at the center of it all? Where was Brock Lesnar? He was exactly where you'd expect him to be. In a private, sterile gym in the middle of nowhere. No cell phone. No social media. Just 40-pound chains and a 200-pound heavy bag. For Brock, the world outside didn't exist. The noise, the media, the outrage, the sponsorship calls. It was just wind rattling the windows of his fortress. He was an entity insulated by fame, by money, and by a company that had spent 2 decades telling him he was not like other men. We see a handler figure, someone like a Paul Heyman, enter the gym. He's wringing his hands, holding a phone. Brock, he says, his voice nervous. We have a situation. The women, they sang woes. Vocal. The media is calling this a disaster. They want you to issue a statement. Brock doesn't stop. He just continues his assault on the heavy bag. Thud. A statement about what? He grunts, not even looking. About the allegations! Brock! About Janel Grant! Thud. Brock stops. He turns, his face dripping with sweat, his eyes devoid of any emotion. That's not my business. That's their business! Brock! They're saying you were involved. Thud. I'm involved in a multi-million-dollar contract. That's what I'm involved in. They'll get over it. The crowd cheered. The check cleared. The handler sighs. He knows it's useless. This is the truth of the beast. He is not a man. He is a product. He is a weapon. And the company had just aimed him at their own feet. He doesn't see the moral catastrophe. He doesn't see the pain he's connected to. He just sees a target and a payday. The disconnect is terrifying. The man causing the outrage is the only one who cannot feel it. It's the day of the premium live event. The show that Brock Lesnar's return was meant to boost. The stadium is sold out. Hours before the doors open, Mark is walking backstage with a clipboard, trying to project calm, but he's sweating. He walks to the women's locker room to go over the final match card. He knocks, and the door opens. Chloe is standing there. She's not in her gear. She's in jeans and a tee. Behind her, the other women scheduled for the show are all in street clothes. They are holding their travel bags. What is this? Mark says, his voice shaking. Chloe, you're on in 90 minutes! Get to makeup! Chloe shakes her head. No, we're not. What do you mean, we're not? He sputters. We're not working! She says, her voice as solid as stone. You can't do this. This is a breach of contract. This is the biggest show of the year. Chloe steps into the hallway, forcing him to back up. And you breached our trust. You put him on the card. You told the world that he is more important than us, that he's more important than her. She said it. The name. Then Janel Grant. Mark's face goes white. This is not a negotiation. It's a statement. We are not performing on the same show as that man. We are not going to stand on your empowerment stage while you hide a monster behind the curtain. You want a show? You go out there. You explain to that crowd why half your roster is gone. You explain it to the sponsors. You go and tell them that business is business. She walks past him. One by one, the other women follow. It's a silent, solemn procession. The outrage is no longer a protest. It is an exodus. The show was chaos. Matchas were canceled. The broadcast was forced to show confusing technical difficulties, graphics. The commentators, for the first time in their lives, were left speechless, stammering about last-minute card changes. The walkout was the real story. It was the only story. The company's hand was forced. In the middle of the broadcast, Lesnar's advertised match was quietly, unceremoniously canceled due to travel issues. But everyone knew. The screen fades to black. We are left to reflect. The shocking return of Brock Lesnar, the one intended to be a massive pro-fight taboo spectacular, lasted less than 1 week. It didn't expose the Janel Grant scandal. That was already public. No, the outrage wasn't just about the allegations. It was about the arrogance. The company, in its pursuit of a familiar thrill, a reliable draw, believed that its own machine was big enough to crush any moral objection. They believed the audience would forget. They believed the talent would stay silent. They believed that money was louder than trauma. But here is the real twist. They were wrong. The scandal was not the end of the story. The walkout was the beginning of a new one. The company's shocking decision didn't reveal the power of the beast. It revealed the power of the locker room. It showed that the women's revolution was not just a marketing slogan. It was real. It had a voice. And it was no longer willing to be a prop in a story written by compromised men. The true exposure wasn't of one man's alleged sins. It was the exposure of a broken system. And the outrage was the sound of the women who were finally and collectively refusing to hold it up any longer.